Good day, good evening, all. I think we're in very different time zones today, which is thrilling. I'm Donna Butts. I'm the Executive Director of Generations United. I'm thrilled so many of you are joining us today for our webinar entitled Intergenerational Solutions to Combating Ageism Across the Lifespan. In fact, we have more than 500 people register, so I know there's intense interest in this important topic. We're also here to celebrate Global Intergenerational Week, which starts today and goes through April 30th. The annual campaign is now in its fourth year and celebrates all things intergenerational. It's led by our good friends, Generations Working Together in Scotland, with participants from all over the world. 14 different countries are promoting the campaign and planning a wide variety of virtual and in-person events. We are so honored to partner with the Eisner Foundation, our good colleagues at the Eisner Foundation, as the U.S. leaders for this campaign. Please check out the link in chat to learn more about all the rich events happening as part of Global Intergenerational Week, and sign up to be a supporter, and that way you'll be among the first to know all about next year's campaign. At Generations United, we believe that all levels of society are stronger when we build and support connections between the generations. To be effective in our work, we're committed to using a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens that recognizes collective and individual cultures, values, norms, ages, lived experience, and practices that offer opportunities and support for people of all ages. We've embarked on a journey to be intentionally DEI, around intentional DEI issues and practices in the entire continuum of our work. We see age and ending ageism across the lifespan as a critical part of this work. The term ageism was coined by one of my heroes, Dr. Robert Butler, and it first appeared in the public eye in the Washington Post in 1969 in an article written by a young reporter named Carl Bernstein. Later, Bob won a Pulitzer Prize for his 1975 book, Why Survive? Being Old in America, where he passionately wrote about ageism and its many negative effects. Ageism comes in many forms. While its original use was in reference to older adults, it affects young people and indeed people across the lifespan. It's the only ism we all have experienced and will experience. It's based on myths, assumptions, and stereotypes. It marginalizes all of us and causes us to feel invisible and of little, if any, value. While the programs we'll learn about today engage primarily teenagers and young adults, we know ageism can take root early in life. That's why it's so important for intergenerational opportunities to begin at a very young age in order to build empathy and compassion. And I was reminded of this when I was thinking about a panel I did many years ago in Minneapolis. And there was a 16-year-old on the panel. And when he started his remarks, he said, I'm 16 and I've been volunteering. No, he said, I've been volunteering for 16 years and now I drive myself. I've been volunteering for 16 years and now I drive myself. Because his mother used to take him as a baby to be held in programs around the city. So to him, it was normal to be with older adults. He looked forward to that time. He valued it. And that was something that he learned at a very young age. Intergenerational connections are a powerful tool in building communities where people thrive. That's why we're thrilled that the World Health Organization, also known as the WHO, recognizes the importance of this work. We're honored that one of the representatives of the WHO is with us today to discuss their global campaign to combat ageism and the intergenerational guide they recently released. We will follow this with a rich discussion and conversation with a wonderful group of people committed to building intergenerational connections. But before we get started, I wanted to alert you to a couple of things. We're recording the webinar, and everyone who registered for today's event will receive a link to that. Please be sure to share it with others, whether they're interested in intergenerational work and ageism or not. They need to know about this. Stay up to date on intergenerational news, resources, and more events like this. Please follow Generations United on social media, We have a growing group on LinkedIn and other platforms, and sign up for our newsletters. Important to sign up for our newsletters and alerts because stay tuned. Soon we'll be announcing the dates and location of our 2025 Global Conference. Please join us at the only conference focused exclusively on intergenerational solutions. And then we're also thrilled that in 2026, we'll begin to partner and alternate years with our dear colleagues at Generations Working Together when the conference goes to Scotland. So look forward to 2025 and our first international experience in many years with our colleagues there. And finally, I hope you've already noticed that the Generations United staff, that Crackerjack staff, are posting links to relevant resources in the chat. Be sure to keep an eye on the chat box and also share and communicate with each other using that. To really understand the power of intergenerational work, you need to experience the relationships that develop between younger and older people. That's why we're so happy to share 2 videos today that show just some of the benefits of intergenerational programs. Our colleagues at Derote created this beautiful video we're about to share with you, showcasing friendships formed during their intergenerational programs. Derote's a nonprofit organization in New York addressing the challenges of an aging population with a diverse range of programs and services. They deliver those programs and services through intergenerational connections with volunteers of all ages. And now let's see the impact of their work in action.
Come on, sit down. How are you doing?
I'm still old and bitter.
Special girl. We discovered that we have a lot of things in common.
We're both Leos. We're both the youngest.
You're both the youngest. We both shop at the kosher market.
Shout out to the kosher marketplace.
We have so much in common.
When it comes to bringing people together, intergenerational engagement is a core piece of Derote mission. It's the spirit of what we do to release social isolation and to break down stereotypes. That's who we are.
I met Eloise on Zoom when she was 13 years old.
Yeah.
I won't tell you how old I am.
We were both in the intergenerational chess program.
He's better than I am, but it was, we would have a conversation and it always developed into something interesting.
I was immediately taken by your Zoom background.
It's never the same twice.
Yeah.
You know, someone who I've met who I feel like is more similar to me than most people I've met. Besides my family, you're easily one of the people that know me best.
Nathaniel is genuine. He's there when he's there. I would tell him anything I would tell anybody else.
I feel sometimes that I can say things in the group that I wouldn't say to my brother or to a friend.
We both have so many similar interests. It's just great.
I feel like it's like we're just friends, you know?
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to refer to Selma as a peer because I have so much respect for her.
Please.
We're not that different.
Our youngest folks and our oldest folks are used to being dismissed
Right.
and ignored.
On the side of a conversation, on the side of a room, and now they're all at the center. It's a huge thing to see yourself through somebody else's eyes.
When you're with other people that aren't necessarily your family but are different ages, I think it really provides like perspective in life, things in like a greater scheme.
We didn't just play chess. I mean, we talked about life. Just you being open to share your life with me, like, makes me grateful.
Their experiences are similar to mine.
They're so similar.
I mean, it really, it's a beautiful thing.
I'd be like coming home on like Thursday afternoon, I'd be like, oh right, guys, like sorry, I can't do anything.
Thursday, you know, at 5 o'clock, you're gonna
like
be
5
home.
o'clock Thursday, like.
And that's it.
For me, it was a lifesaver. Derote gave me a reason to get up, shower, shave. I met wonderful people.
We've become really close.
This to me is almost like home.
We've shared a bond. I think the greatest gift that an older person can give a younger person is for them to be able to look forward to their life.
In the same way that it gives the adults hope for the future, it's also very meaningful for a young person. We see kids coming into their own, developing opinions and ideas, confidence in who they are because they have elders who are believing in them.
What I found out about the people that I met through this program is how smart and more mature they are than I am.
Nathaniel has a very special place in my life, and I can't wait to see what he becomes.
She will do something special in this world. I know this.
Sharing your life with someone, even if it's just like an hour a week, is just an amazing opportunity.
DeRote has given me the chance to form an incomparable bond. It's been basically life-changing for me. I'm about to cry. That's a
You
lot
can
for
cry,
me.
it's okay.
It's such a special dynamic that I'll never experience anywhere else.
I love you too, Eloise.
We need social connections. It's like the air that we breathe in. All of a sudden, they have an insight in life. They feel needed. That's when things really start to like go to a different level. There's a need for what we do for everybody involved.
You shine.
Thank you.
You know, a video is good when you cry every time you see it. It's absolutely lovely. And we're so grateful for our partnership with DeRote and are such fans of the wonderful, wonderful work that they do. They're one of our programs of distinction and one that is so deserving of all of the attention and credit that they get. So thank you, DeRote, for everything you do. So now I'm honored to welcome Marlene Krasovitsky. She is coming to us very early in the morning from Australia, so we're really grateful that she's joining us. She's a consultant with the WHO's Global Campaign to Combat Ageism. The Generations United team, by the way, is going to be sharing links to all of the speakers' biographies in the chat, so you can learn more about their extensive backgrounds, because we've got some very impressive people with us today. We greatly appreciate Marlene, who's going to today share the important work that WHO is doing to highlight intergenerational practices as one of the solutions to combating ageism. So now it's my pleasure to welcome Marlene. Welcome.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Sorry, I just can't.
Are we having technical glitches in Australia, Marlene?
Yes, I'm afraid we are.
We'll give Marlene a moment to see if she can fix whatever technical issues are happening there. Let's just hope that it's not a kangaroo or a koala bear that have crawled into her computer. We're really grateful for the work that the WHO is doing in this area with an organization like WHO paying attention to ageism and realizing the importance of intergenerational connections and intergenerational practices in helping to alleviate ageism is really, really important for all of us. It's something that we've all been concerned about. And I know we have many people on the webinar today who've made their life's work of really working to make sure that we're connecting and valuing people of all ages while we're also increasing the opportunities for people to be experience their lives at the best that they can be at every age that they are. And I can remember times when I was younger and people said I was too young to contribute. And as I get older and older, people who sort of look or don't look at me because I'm getting older. And so therefore I'm probably done. And for all of us, we have so much more to give, again, at every age and stage of life. So Marlene, how are you doing?
I'm afraid I can't get back in.
Can't get back in.
So
We can hear
sorry.
you. We can hear you. And so if you're willing to, if you'd be willing to share your remarks, even without your camera, then we'd be able to hear your remarks, and our staff may be able to go ahead and play the video that you were going to play that Gravis did for us. But both of the videos you're going to share. Does that sound? Oh, there you are. Are you here?
Okay.
All right. Take it
All
away,
right.
Marlene.
Okay. Well, what I can't see are my notes, but let's just go with this. So, look, thank you very much, and I do apologise for those glitches. I'm so pleased to be able to join you with on Global Intergenerational Week. I want to talk a little bit about the global campaign to combat ageism and our new guide to supporting intergenerational work, connecting generations. But why am I here talking about ageism during Global Intergenerational Week? Well, quite simply because because intergenerational work is one of the key strategies, one of the 3 evidence-based strategies that we know will combat ageism. But it gives me great pleasure to show you a video from our Director General, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, who will tell us more.
Ageism affects us all. A person's age should not define who they are. But the stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination of ageism can have real consequences for both physical and mental health. Here is the good news. We can combat ageism. One of the most effective strategies is called intergenerational practice. It brings people of different ages together in activities that promote greater understanding and respect across generations. To help with this effort, WHO has published Connecting Generations, a practical guide for governments and civil society organizations to implement this strategy. In a world that can seem more divided than ever, the need for solidarity, including across generations, has never been more urgent. The new guide is part of a suite of resources available through the Global Campaign to Combat Ageism, which can be used in a broad range of settings, including healthcare, long-term care, schools, workplaces, and communities. This Global Intergenerational Week, I commend the many stakeholders around the world who are advocating for international practice to support health and well-being for everybody, no matter what their age. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So again, I come to you from the Global Campaign to Combat Ageism, and our vision is to build a world for all ages. Our mission is to change the way we think, feel, and act towards age and aging. Now, let me just unpack that very, very briefly. The way we think, it's all of those stereotypes and assumptions that we carry in our heads about older people, about younger people. Like all older people are frail and foolish and forgetful. All younger people are disloyal and impetuous. The way we feel, all of our prejudices and biases, and of course, the way we act, the discriminatory behaviours that keep older people out of work and that hold younger people back from promotions, for instance, at work. So the Global Campaign to Combat Ageism aims to change the way we think, feel, and act about age and ageing. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And just a moment on the background of how the Global Campaign to Combat Ageism came about. Back in 2016, the 194 member states of the United Nations adopted the Global Strategy and Action Plan on Aging and Health. And then over the next few years, there was a lot of work defining the campaign, its mission, and very importantly, gathering the evidence base together on ageism. And then in 2020, the UN endorsed the UN Decade of Healthy Aging from 2021 to 2030. And then we had a really landmark report that was issued, the first ever global report on Ageism, which really is a landmark report which sets the evidence base on the prevalence and the impact of ageism. And there at the bottom of that slide, you see some of the resources and tools that the campaign has produced. And what's just one important point, what's really important is that the UN Decade of Healthy Aging, as I said, goes from 2021 to 2030, but the global campaign is not time-bound. And that's in recognition of the fact that it takes a long time to change deeply embedded social norms. And so this campaign is here for some time to come. Next slide, please. And these are the key messages of the campaign. As I said, ageism refers to how we think, the stereotypes, feel, prejudices, and act, the discriminatory behaviours towards others or ourselves based on age. And ageism is everywhere. The prevalence is massive. 1 in 2 people worldwide are ageist against older people. And most importantly, we experience ageism throughout the life course. And of course, ageism exacerbates other forms of disadvantage like disability, race, sex, and so on. Ageism is seriously harmful. It affects our physical health, our mental health. It can actually shave 7.5 years off our lives if we internalize all of those ageist beliefs about being of lesser value and so on, and if we experience ageism. Ageism will impact on our social well-being and, of course, takes a heavy economic toll. But the good news is that ageism can be combated through policy and law, educational activities, and intergenerational interventions. And that's the strategy I will focus on today. And that's why we are so delighted to be here with you. Thank you. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about connecting generations, which is the first of our how-to guides. The next one to come will be policy and law, but today I'm going to talk about connecting generations. Thank you. Next slide, please. So the purpose of the guide is it provides step-by-step guidance for anyone wanting to use intergenerational practice to combat ageism and to promote understanding and mutual respect among generations. So it's for those well-versed in intergenerational practice as well as those who are newer to the practice. Next slide, please. So for the purposes of connecting generations, the definition of intergenerational practice is to foster interaction amongst people of different ages, which is purposeful, mutually beneficial, and promotes greater generational consciousness and learning, builds respect, understanding, and so on, is of course inclusive and builds on the strengths that everybody brings. And of course, it can be delivered through a range of different types of interventions and in many different contexts. So it is sensitive to resource differences across different contexts. Next slide, please. So I'm now just going to walk you very quickly through the guide and introduce you to some of the key features. This really is a treasure trove, this guide. It will focus on things that you will be well versed in, many of you, but there may be a lot of new things in there for you to inspire you and to motivate you as well. So please, next slide. And here we have the principles of intergenerational practice. I want to focus here just for a moment. Whilst there are a lot of tips and tools, planning, evaluating, delivering, and so on, what's really important is we recognise that intergenerational practice can bring great benefits, but there is also the tension that can be exacerbated between people of different ages. And that's why it's seriously important that we go through with a principle of do no harm and that we are alive to those possibilities and those tensions. And so by building these principles into our practice, things like inclusiveness, equity, participatory and based on human rights principles, we can ensure that we achieve the outcomes we're looking to achieve and that we do no harm. And the guide has some really important sections on safeguarding and mitigating risks. Next slide, please. The guide is full of case studies from around the world, and you will also be aware of many case studies in your contexts in many different settings. So whether it's intergenerational workplaces or educational settings and so on. Please, next slide. And in the annex, there are 40 different intergenerational activities for you to browse and for you to be inspired with. You'll find for each of these different activities, there will be tips for the facilitators, the resources that you might think about needing to use, and so on. So I really do hope that you dive deeply into these activities. These are evidence-based strategies that have been used around the world. Please, next slide. And so this is where you'll find Connecting Generations, and I do commend it to you. But I also do invite you to join the global campaign to combat ageism. We would love you to join this movement. And if you are doing some work, please get in touch with us at Hello at a World for All Ages. We would love to hear from you and what you're doing and to showcase practice. Next slide, please. Another couple of important points I want to leave you with. If you are interested in translating the guide or any of the resources of the campaign, this is our guide to help you translate the resources. I know many people are interested in producing resources in different languages. There are some, of course, but maybe not in the language that you would like. And secondly, we are considering holding an intergenerational clinic for people who may not be as well versed or as experienced in intergenerational practice or may not have supporting organisations in their contexts. So if you are interested in an intergenerational clinic using the guide and then letting us know what you're going to be doing with it or what you do with it, please get in touch with us at Hello at a World for All Ages. So thank you very much. Apologies again for the glitch at the very beginning. But now it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to a video that is by Gravis, which is a not-for-profit organisation which is based in India, and they have done a lot of work bringing generations together, older and younger women, around issues of empowerment, scarcity, and so on. So enjoy the video, and thank you for your time.
Among them, Gravis uses intergenerational approach to address these challenges by uniting women of different age groups in village dialogues, training and awareness programs, medical camps, and advocacy events. It focuses on improving their health status and livelihood.
मीटिंग रमाइना नहीं त्या समजला आपण लाभार्थी चयन करा भाई आपण इरे बनावणो तो काम कर ले होते मीटिंग में
बेगलंग देख लिया भाई ये बननो चढ़ बे बिंग बना दे से बिंग देख लिया जागे भाई आ चीज बनी को बनी नहीं बे बेरा बना तो प्रस्ताव लेवा भाई टांका बना तो प्रस्ताव लेवा भाई बाग लगावा जगह प्रस्ताव लेवा.
It doesn't merely provide aid, it empowers by equipping women with knowledge and fostering a sense of solidarity in the community. This creates a ripple effect of positive change.
पुरुष लोग भी पहले जैसे महिलाओं को मान्यता नहीं देते थे, अब वो उनसे सहभागी के रूप में काम करने लगे. कोई भी काम होता है तो उनको लगता है कि हमारी औरतें जो कुछ कर सकती हैं, क्योंकि गांव के अंदर जो इतना लाभ मिला था, टांका हो गया, खड़ीन हो गया, तो सब महिलाओं के नाम से करते. तो एक गांव का उत्थान हो रहा, विकास होने लग गया और बालिका और महिलाओं का नेतृत्व वर्धन होने लगा.
In the arid landscape, these intergenerational learning groups have become a space for shared learning where experiences are exchanged, problems are discussed, and solutions are explored.
समूह जुड़ियो जो के फायदो ही फायदो है. टांका मिल गया, धोरा पाले मिल गए, फसल गणी हुए और फायदो आगे आगे मिलतो ही जावे.
कई नाम है समूह रो?
करनी समूह.
करनी समूह. कितना सदस्य हो आप लोग?
मैं 10. ए माने सिखाओ है कि सब अच्छो काम करो, पढ़ाई लिखाई करो, घर में साफ सफाई रखो, समूह में महीने महीने मीटिंग में आओ.
बगीचो लगवाया, दीदी बगीचो दियो है, मां लगायो है, नींबू भी होवे, गुंदा भी होवे, गुंद और सब्जी बनावा अचार भी गालो नींबू जो गर्मी में माने काम देवे दुकान में तो लाता 10 रुपये नींबू देता और अब मोर घरे घणी बार लोग ले जावे मोल भी ले जावे
महिला आगे बढ़ने लागी बोलने लागी बालिका भी जागरूक होने लागी बुढ़ी बडेरिया भी समझने लागी एक दूसरे ने पूछ ले भाई के सुविधा है के कुछ करना बालिका बतावे बड़ी लुगाइया ने पहला महिला इतनी जागरूक नहीं होती.
With every drop of rain being conserved through installation of various rainwater harvesting structures like takas and kharins, women of Thar are improving the health of their communities. As members of intergenerational groups, they experience a deep sense of dignity and feel empowered as they have a direct stake in changing not just their own but lives of others too. Women once bound by the constraints of desert now stand as a pillars of resilience, their health and well-being flourishing through intergenerational wisdom.
Thank you, Marlene. I'm so glad you were able to join us. And thank you to Help Age International and Gravis for sharing their video and their work. I think the videos really help to give life to what we're talking about. I have to tell you, I did sneak a peek in the chat during when I wasn't off camera, and I'm just thrilled that we have so many people from all over the world joining today. Thank you. It really does prove that we have such an incredible network, and we can strengthen this network by the work that we do when we work together. So now I'm really pleased to turn the program over to Cliff Wheaton. He's from New York University, and he's going to moderate our fantastic panel. I've had the pleasure of knowing Cliff now for several years while he was studying and working on it with Ernest Gonzalez at the Center for Aging and Health and Aging Innovation at NYU's Silver School of Social Work. So Cliff, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today and to see the incredible work that the World Health Organization is doing in leading the fight to combat ageism. It's so clear from Marlene's presentation and from a growing body of research that ageism levies a large cost on society, both socioeconomically and in terms of health and mental health and cognitive health. But thankfully, we know that we have strategies and a growing evidence base to support those strategies that can reduce ageism systematically and combat these lifespan health effects. My research suggests that across race and ethnicity, ageism is one of the most common reasons cited for experiencing discriminatory interactions. And so we know that there is also an important benefit to approaching this this problem from an equity-based lens that is rooted in promoting diversity and exploring the heterogeneity of aging experiences. I think it's also really exciting, to see these videos once again. I'm sure we all know that watching videos of intergenerational programs brings such joy, and they're so clear that empathy is a key mechanism occurring in these intergenerational programs and the experiences that participants have. And as we grow this literature that is exploring these types of programmatic interventions, I think we're going to better understand how that intergenerational empathy and the promotion of intergenerational solidarity can provide protective effects across the lifespan for health and for wealth. I'm very excited to introduce the panelists that will be leading our discussion with us today. They are all practitioners of intergenerational programs and have a wealth of experience to offer us here today. First is Stephanie DeShassi, who is an independent consultant based in the United Kingdom. She works with Help Age International as a voice advisor and the World Health Organization as a voice and meaningful engagement consultant. The scope of her work includes documenting practices and supporting small pilots on intergenerational approaches around the world. Dr. Jeremy Holloway is a professor and director of geriatric education at the University of North Dakota. His research focuses on the social determinants of health, specifically self-efficacy, connectedness, and resiliency of older adults. He is also the founder of Telegacy, an intergenerational curriculum that fosters connection between healthcare students and older adults in order to reduce social isolation and loneliness. And finally, Alex Santiago Harao is the Director of Education and Community Engagement at New York Theater Workshop. In this role, he oversees all education and engagement initiatives, including Mind the Gap, which supports intergenerational playwriting and performance programs. So welcome to all of our panelists. Very excited to hear your perspectives on this work. And I'd like to start by having you each briefly share an overview of your intergenerational work. Perhaps we could start with you, Stephanie. I see you first.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me. So my intergenerational work has been broadly practical. I've been working with international NGO like Help Age International and Restless Development, which is a youth-led organization, in working alongside programs in low and middle income countries, giving some technical support, but also documenting new innovative approaching, testing, and learning from the different approaches. So it's very much of a testing and learning approach. And always starting with a really deep understanding of the micro context, the social norms, the constraints of generations working together, the potential conflicts, power dynamics, and then mostly building on what's already there. So not recreating the wheel, working with existing groups, existing women's organization or youth groups, older people associations, and then see how we can bring them together, creating some safe spaces, and then give them the time and the space to discuss their experiences of particular issues, come together, find a common agenda, and potentially find common solutions. So I've documented also some of the work of Help Age International in 10 countries, alongside some colleagues in the countries. And through that work, I've worked closely with WHO colleagues, and we sort of peer reviewed our work, and I've now sort of dug into their guide, and we're working very closely together to also make sure we embed the voice, meaningful engagement, accountability into some of these principles of intergenerational approaches. And we're running currently with Help Age a pilot in Uganda and Nepal on how to bring generations together to combat climate change. It's something quite practical.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of stuff going on, Stephanie. We'll come back to it because I want to get to the international context and sort of the transferability of these programs as well. Let's hop to Jeremy. Do you mind telling us a little bit about Telegacy in your work?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been engaged with, bringing in inclusion and wherever I could and helping people be included. 2020, March, things changed for just about everybody. And I created an intergenerational program called Telegacy. And Telegacy connects university students in healthcare fields with older adults who may feel socially isolated or alone, but they just want social connection. And the students are trained, and they meet virtually over the phone or in person with the older adult. And at the end of those sessions, we take the notes that the student took, and we give the older adult a legacy book, a book that summarizes the stories that they shared with the students, because we want to reinforce the fact that their story matters, they matter, their story is one to be told. And the purpose of Telegacy is to rehumanize healthcare and AI, one conversation at a time, because we just don't want to stop with just the legacy book and that experience. We want to then bring folks into a community in which people have that commonality. They've had that experience. Now, how do we continue that, reinforcing the value and the efficacy of others? And we think that's a great component to also influence AI as well.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jeremy. And Alex, can you tell us a little bit about your work with the New York Theater?
Yeah, hi everyone. So glad to be in your company today. My name is Alex, as Cliff said, and I work at New York Theater Workshop, and most folks might know about New York Theater Workshop as an off-Broadway theater company in the heart of the East Village in the Lower East Side in New York City. most known for developing the musical Rent that has traveled all around the world. But at the heart of our education and community engagement programming, there's a mission to bring folks together in an intergenerational, co-generational, multi-generational fashion. And our flagship program, intergenerational program, it's called Mind the Gap, which uses the artistry, the theatrical experience to bring people together, predominantly teens and elders, in two different models: a playwriting model where we bring teens and elders into deep dialogue and conversation, and at the same time learned how to write plays for the stage. But they write those plays inspired by each other's life stories. And the resulting work, typically a short play, is then performed by professional actors on stage readings. And those stories that result out of those intergenerational dialogues are stories that contain elements of the other person's story and life and characteristics and qualities, but also the writer's personal voice and artistic expression. And the second model within the Mind the Gap program is a performance and devising model. While in the playwriting model, the writers are collaborating and learning from each other and learning the art form of theater, they don't perform their own work. In the performance model and devising model, the collective group of teens and elders are writing for themselves a piece of theater to perform in an invited culminating performance, a work in progress performance. And at the core of the work that we do, all of those guiding principles that were discussed at the beginning are applied. But we approach it through the art form of theater, and I want to talk more about how the art form relates deeply to intergenerational connection, and how, as an artistic community, we focus predominantly on theater as a tool to combat ageism, build empathy, solidarity, community collective, knowledge gathering, and expression.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Alex. I mean, I'm sensing some really exciting themes across the work that all three of you are doing. And, I can't help but be curious about this concept of voice that Stephanie's mentioned and is mentioned in her work. And so I was wondering, Stephanie, if you could start us off by just maybe defining voice and how it relates to ageism, combating ageism, and intergenerational practice.
Yeah, no, thank you. For me, having a voice relates to really having opportunities, but also these safe spaces that I was mentioning, which for me it's quite important and be supported to express opinions and beliefs, and then importantly feel informed and confident to take part of decision making that affects one's life. And in terms of the link with ageism, having these spaces to bring young people and older people together, make the time for them to listen to each other, appreciate each other's contribution, find their common voice as well. They probably experience similar issues in their communities, and having a quality conversation, a dialogue, well facilitated, can really break some of the stereotypes, some of the preconceived ideas they may have of each other, and then really bring what is common, and the solidarity and empathy that you were also talking about, and really combat ageism from very much the grassroots through really the joy of being together.
Right. Oh, it's so fascinating. I'm wondering, I'm immediately thinking, Alex, how does the theater operate as a setting for that sort of process?
Yeah, we're biased, but we think theater is the perfect art form for intergenerational work, because theater is about storytelling. It's about telling personal stories, about telling communal stories, and it's about collaboration. And we know from research that we are storytelling animals, that we converse in stories. We think in stories. We imagine a world in stories. It's the primary way that we communicate as a human species. That's how we pass information. That's how we create culture. That's how we create knowledge. That's how we create history, by telling stories to each other and preserving those stories. And theater as an art form is about telling stories, both based on real life and also it's sort of imagining the world that we want to live in, and sort of envisioning a different life for ourselves and our communities. So it is that duality, expressing what's happening now and sort of thinking about the future. Theater is about collaboration. We cannot do theater by ourselves, right? You can do a monologue, you can do a solo show, but behind that person in a production setting, there could be hundreds of people. So collaboration is needed. And theater is about empathy. It's about learning about the other, and seeing, hopefully, life through a different point of view, and sort of trying to understand the other. And it's also about not only empathy, but conflict. It's about addressing conflict, it's about understanding conflict. There's no drama without understanding different desires. And looking at conflict often in a dispassionate way, so that we can analyze it, deconstruct it, and work through it. And so we use all of those techniques of drama building, theater making, in an intergenerational context to address ageism, to address stereotypes, to address different abilities. All of those things are central. Again, we think of theater as the most humanistic of art forms, because it is about both talking about the human condition, imagining different paths for the human condition, and about deep collaboration and deep dialogue about real things.
That's so fantastic. And that really makes me think about your work as well, Dr. Holloway, being created and born out of COVID, where we all sort of felt increasingly isolated, lonely. Like we, in many cases, particularly for older adults, didn't have anyone to share our stories with, to share our lives with on a day-to-day basis. Can you talk a little bit about how that sort of storytelling and elevation of voices post-COVID has been empowered by your work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in 2020 March, a chaplain friend of mine in a retirement community was telling me about how older adults were dying indirectly from social isolation and loneliness. I still remember it, it really impacted me, and that's why this program exists. And I started to just say to myself, oh, like it would be great if folks just feel a little less lonely, and maybe they can just share stories about their life and everything like that. And now that I'm more into it, and I'm a geriatric professor, and I give workshops on social determinants of health and everything like that. And I don't know how many here has heard about the age-friendly approach, but there's 4 M's. And the most important M is what matters to that older adult. And we encourage clinicians, anybody in healthcare, to ask the patient what matters to them. It's an open-ended question for a reason, right? It's not to be dictated by any professional. Like they're the professional of their own. We're all the professionals of our own lived experience. And really, when it comes down to it, it's their story. And I say that your story belongs in healthcare. Your story belongs in any field that you're in, because you're there, and you can't separate your story from where you are right now. This is a part of my story, talking to all of you. And there's a why behind our story. And understanding why and understanding someone's story, I think, is more important than understanding who's right, wrong, better, worse, good, bad, less, or more, right? It's their story. That's the most important thing. That's when everything changes and nothing changes at the same time. When I learn about Alex's story, right? When I learn about Stephanie's story, like it just changes everything, and it's that human experience that we were just talking about. And that's the kind of thing that I've been seeing and experiencing through our program.
That's so fantastic. And Stephanie, given the breadth of your international work, do you find any of these concepts translate, across all of these different cultures and communities that you're pushing into and supporting intergenerational program development?
Yeah, I think they do translate because sometimes we make assumptions that younger people and older people may have nothing in common or don't want to be together, or as Alex said, there may be some conflict, and there is conflict at times, and it's actually something positive, because if you unpack it together, it's about listening, and with listening come the empathy that Alex was talking about. So, and that really translates from one context to the other. The nature and the reason of the conflicts may be very, very different. It could be poverty, it could be the pressure of climate change, it could be deep economic inequalities, but actually the willingness of human beings to come together, to understand traditional practices, to be curious about each other, I think really translate from one context to another.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, there's so much enormous heterogeneity across these different categories of older adult, of younger adult, right? Across race, ethnicity, religion, country of origin. And one of the challenges of intergenerational programs and research and evaluation related to these programs here in the United States is that historically they've been relatively homogenous and really primarily catered to relatively high income white older adults and relatively high income white younger adults. So I'm really curious to hear from all of you about strategies your programs are implementing to increase inclusivity, to engage in equitable and sustainable approaches to program expansion and to development. Maybe we'll start with Alex. New York City, multicultural hub of America.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was going to echo Stephanie on the intergenerational point, and then also connect it to New York City, and to say that we have done Mind the Gap, not only, of course, in New York City, which we think of as a world city, of course, with every language imaginable and identity and experience and cultural background in this large city. So we've done work in that fashion with not only at the theater, inviting folks to our theater in the East Village, but doing the program embedded in specific communities with specific community organizations serving in a hyper-local fashion those communities. Also communities of identity that are not just geographic. So it could be around a particular culture, a particular group, or a particular identity. We've done a number of programs devoted exclusively to queer teens and queer elders, and queer teens and queer elders of color, right? Even within a particular identity, obviously there are many differences at the intergenerational level. So we've adapted the program for those circumstances, and in an intergenerational fashion, we've done the program in London. We've done the program in Latin America, and we experience similar conflicts, right? And when we did it in London, there is a particular conflict around access to housing or lack of housing for younger people, and the conflict between the generations on that, mobility and economic, economic mobility. And when we did the program, for example, in Chile, in Santiago, it was, right at the birth of an entire socio-political movement around reproductive rights, around the role of young people in society, and the role of young people in electing a government and changing the constitution, right? So it was at the heart of very deep political conversations. And in New York City, we have similar gaps to bridge, but it is all about bringing people together in rooms to have deep conversation. And as Stephanie was saying, is about deep listening. We often think about deep conversation as us being the ones that are doing all the talking, rather than us doing all the listening for understanding. And then the fun part of it is something that we also bring into the equation through the art, through theater making and storytelling, which is so essential as well in our spaces for to move forward in a way that is conducive to growth from all sides and mutually beneficial to both sides. Because as somebody said before in the chat, which I want to uplift, theater is embodied learning. So we're not only talking about it, but we're also enacting the change that we want to see. Our stories it's highly physical learning as well.
Wonderful. And what about you, Jeremy? How do you think about Telegacy's work, particularly given the context in which you began, where there could be no sort of like hyper local connection in COVID?
Yeah, it starts with really helping that individual build their own self-efficacy up, right? Where they feel like there's somebody worth receiving care, receiving attention, receiving this communication with another human being. Because many individuals, I'm in a rural area, right? So there's a lot of folks that are isolated and alone. And so those individuals first, they have to feel like they have to feel welcome. So how do you help someone feel welcome? How do you help someone feel less socially isolated and alone? I'm a curriculum guy. So what we try to do is help train the students to reinforce the value of the stories that are being shared. How do you respond when someone's sharing a story? What do you say? What are you not saying that's influencing the room? And so in creating a space for that, where we actually practice that before we just jump in and do it, can really help make a really big difference.
Great. I am trying to keep track of time, so I noticed where I almost have to turn it back over to Donna. But I was wondering if each of you could just share sort of one key lesson learned from your programs over the last few years, something we can pay forward to the other practitioners who are participating here in this seminar. I'm coming out of this thinking so much about the ways we can think about the intersectional aspects of ageism, of racism, of sexism, of ableism, and how intergenerational programs have potential to have multiplicative impact across those domains. Maybe we'll start back with Jeremy, if that's okay. Is there anything you would like to share with the group for the last minute here?
I mean, one of the things I would do is try to reframe how you see your present. We use mindfulness to do that in our program. Reframe how you see your future. Visualization, goal setting, SMART goal setting can be really useful. We use that in the curriculum. Reframe how you see your past. We use growth mindset for that. Instead of thinking about all the mistakes you made and how did this go wrong? What did I learn? Who am I becoming? How am I becoming a better human being? I believe human beings are four-dimensional, amazing beings, right? And so we can think we can think real deep, right? And so how can we reflect on that and really hone in on those skills and get better at it, so the transformation becomes like that when you don't have a lot of time. You can reinforce the value of someone in a second.
That's great. Thank you, Jeremy. Maybe Stephanie?
Yeah, I think for me is to approach it with quite a lot of humility, because I think we can learn a lot from the people we are working with. And so the deep listening has to apply to us, and make no assumptions and not try to push our own excitement or solutions onto people, and be surprised. And as Jeremy said, the transformation can happen, and the benefits. And I'm thinking of the Gravis video. It was quite amazing what happened there, against all odds of very deep social norms, the women empowerment, the leadership they are showing, and the change they're creating into their community. A lot of it wasn't planned. Right. So you just give the right ingredients, the right platforms, and it can happen.
Love that. Thank you. Alex?
Yeah, I want to also uplift the notion that it is about rigorous and intentional thinking, not just about the collective, but the individual within the program. So to pay close attention to how the program is beneficial to individuals, and how can the individual be treated as an individual that's bringing their own points of view and ideas, and are there practices within the program to engage with them in a meaningful way, independent of the collective. For those folks that are interested in intergenerational programs using the arts, rigor as well around the art making and the art form is important. Often folks think of arts programming as hobbies or add-ons or just activities. And we approach it as a serious, rigorous process that has value for the participants. And the participants really enjoy both the art making and what they learn through the art making as much as they learn from the intergenerational experiences. So for us, there are two goals in the programming. Yeah.
Alex, I'm sorry, I just have to pause you there. I think we're running out of time, so I just want to give Donna the last sort of word here. Thank you all so much, though, to our fantastic panelists.
Hey, thank you, everyone. Please stay with us just for a moment longer while we thank our panelists, Alex, Jeremy, and Stephanie, for such a rich conversation. I think everybody in the chat was saying we could have had this panel for at least another half an hour and still probably not been done. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your experience. And a special thank you to our moderator, Cliff, who I have to shout out because Cliff recently defended his PhD. Yay! And soon will be joining the faculty of the University of Minnesota Duluth Medical School. So congratulations, Cliff. It's going to be fabulous to work with you for many more years. Thank you again to Marlene for sharing WHO's global campaign to combat ageism and their intergenerational guide. Be sure to use it. I hope you were as inspired by the richness of the intergenerational programs and practitioners as I was today. Remember, this is the first day of Global Intergeneration Week. There are exciting virtual in-person events happening all around the world. Be sure to check, to click on the link and what we've shared in chat and participate. In closing, I want to thank the incredible team at Generations United, many of whom are with us today, and close just with something that I heard recently, and that was that aging is so popular, everyone's doing it. So age on, stay in touch, and thank you for being with us today. We wish you a wonderful Global Intergeneration Week. Thank you.